Some people do not go silent because they have nothing left to say. They go silent because at some point saying what they felt became more painful than keeping it inside. Because there comes a moment, after enough disappointment, after enough misunderstanding, after enough trying to explain yourself, when silence no longer feels empty, it feels safer. You have probably seen this kind of silence before. The kind that appears after someone almost says something, then stops. The kind that follows a long pause, when the eyes remain present, but the words never arrive. From the outside it can look simple, like distance, like coldness, sometimes even like indifference, but silence like this is rarely what it seems, because underneath that stillness, something is usually working very hard to stay contained. The person is not disconnected. They are protecting something they no longer trust the world to hold carefully. In psychology, emotional withdrawal often begins when openness repeatedly leads to discomfort instead of relief. When honesty creates tension instead of understanding. When vulnerability is met with correction rather than care. And little by little, without announcing itself, the mind begins learning something dangerous. That speaking openly can cost more than staying quiet. Not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly enough that silence begins to feel reasonable. A practical way to avoid emotional collisions. A quiet method of reducing exposure. Because once words have been misunderstood enough times, silence begins to feel intelligent. Not ideal, not comforting, just safer. And this is where many people misunderstand quiet individuals. They assume silence means there is less emotion, but often, silence means there is too much emotion, being managed very carefully, because silence is rarely emptiness. Very often, it is memory, the emotional system remembering what happened the last time honesty was offered too openly. The body remembering how quickly meaning can be twisted, once feelings leave the mouth. And when memory becomes stronger than trust, quiet starts arriving automatically. That is why the real question is not why some people become silent. The deeper question is, what taught them that silence protects them better than words? Because nobody begins life believing their feelings should stay hidden. That lesson is learned slowly, usually in ordinary moments that looked harmless to everyone else. A child explains hurt and hears impatience. A teenager expresses confusion and is told they are too sensitive. An adult finally says what has been heavy inside and watches the conversation shift into someone else's defensiveness. None of these moments look dramatic alone, but repeated often enough, they shape emotional expectations. The mind begins noticing patterns. What happens when I speak honestly? Do I feel understood, or do I regret saying anything at all? And without fully realizing it, a person begins adjusting. They shorten what they say. They remove details. They explain less. Eventually, they stop trying in certain places altogether, not because there is nothing inside, but because experience has taught them to calculate emotional cost before expression. This is how silence becomes learned behavior, especially in environments where emotions felt inconvenient, where calm appearances mattered more than truth, where being easy to handle earned more acceptance than being emotionally real. The lesson becomes subtle, but powerful. Do not bring too much feeling into the room. Do not complicate things. Do not make others uncomfortable with what hurts inside you. And after enough repetition, silence begins to feel like maturity, as though emotional restraint means strength. But often, what looks like strength is simply protection built carefully over time. Later in life, people may describe that person as reserved, private, hard to read. But often what they are seeing is not only personality, they are seeing old emotional learning, still active in present relationships. Because emotional withdrawal is rarely the absence of feeling. It is usually feeling being held too carefully. And over time, this creates another hidden pattern many people never talk about. A person who becomes used to silence often begins rehearsing conversations internally. Long before speaking becomes possible, they imagine how the other person might react. They predict interruption. They prepare for misunderstanding, even before the first sentence begins. Sometimes entire conversations happen internally, while externally, nothing is said at all. This is why quiet people are often mentally exhausted, even when they appear calm, because the emotional conversation never truly stops. It simply happens inwardly. And inward processing can become relentless. A sentence gets repeated in the mind. A facial expression gets analyzed again. A small change in tone becomes something studied for hours, not because the person wants to overthink, but because their system has learned that details matter when safety feels uncertain. When communication has previously led to pain, even small signals begin to carry weight. This is also why many emotionally withdrawn people notice things others miss. A pause, a hesitation, a shift in someone's voice, a brief change in energy. Because once emotional safety becomes important, attention becomes sharper, and sharper attention often creates deeper exhaustion. The person appears quiet, but internally, they are constantly interpreting, trying to understand what changed, trying to detect what may become uncomfortable, trying to avoid entering another moment they will later regret emotionally. This is where silence becomes more than habit. It becomes regulation, not because silence solves pain, but because silence reduces unpredictability. And unpredictability is often what the nervous system fears most, because pain is difficult. But pain you can predict feels easier than pain that arrives unexpectedly. So many quiet people choose what feels controlled, even if it costs connection. And that cost grows slowly. Relationships begin remaining partial. The person shares enough to function, but not enough to be fully known. They stay present, but emotionally edited. They listen deeply, but reveal little. And over time, people around them often believe they understand them more than they actually do. Because quiet people often become very skilled at appearing available, while protecting the deeper layers of themselves. This creates a strange loneliness. Not loneliness from being physically alone, but loneliness from realizing that people often know only the version of you that felt safe enough to show. And after years of this, expression itself can begin to feel unfamiliar, even when safe people finally appear. Because safety is not only about who stands in front of you, it is also about whether your nervous system believes that safety is real enough to trust. And nervous systems do not update quickly, they update slowly. Through repetition, through consistency, through small moments that do not collapse into harm. That is why healing often feels strange at first, because being listened to without interruption can feel unfamiliar. Being asked gently what you feel can feel unexpectedly emotional. Being met without correction can feel almost disorienting, because the body often expects what used to happen, even when something new is finally happening. And slowly, if safety repeats often enough, something changes. Words begin returning before fear fully leaves. Honesty becomes slightly less heavy. Expression becomes less dangerous. Not easy, but possible. And that is often how healing truly begins. Not dramatically, not through sudden transformation, but through small moments where silence no longer feels necessary every single time. The nervous system starts learning that not every conversation becomes emotional danger. Not every feeling becomes conflict. Not every truth creates distance. And little by little, the person who once survived through silence begins noticing they are quiet by choice. Not only by fear. That difference changes everything. Because chosen silence feels peaceful. Protective silence feels heavy. And learning the difference is often one of the deepest forms of emotional growth. And if any part of this feels familiar, then perhaps what matters most is remembering this. Silence does not mean something is wrong with you. Very often, it means your mind learned carefully from experiences that once demanded caution. What you carry today may have protected you once. And survival, even when it becomes lonely later, was never weakness. Because when safety becomes real, words often return naturally, not forced, not performed, just finally allowed to land, where they no longer feel dangerous. And perhaps the quietest truth is this: many people who learn to stay silent are not waiting for someone to fix them. They are waiting for one moment where what they say is not immediately corrected, explained away, or turned against them. Sometimes one safe conversation changes more than years of advice. Sometimes one person listening carefully begins undoing what many years taught the nervous system to fear. If this reflection stayed with you, even quietly, I would really like to know something. Have you ever stayed silent? Not because you had nothing to say, but because you already knew how easily your words could be misunderstood. Even one sentence in the comments may say more than you think. Because sometimes, the first step out of silence is simply realizing someone else has lived there too.